When my husband died, I thought the worst pain I could ever feel was losing him. I was wrong. The real heartbreak came after his funeral, when my sister told me her child's father was my late husband. Stay with me for a few minutes while I share what really happened. If this story touches your heart, don't forget to show some love. Hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. My name is Monica Hayes. I'm a 35-year-old nurse living in Atlanta. 2 months ago, my world collapsed when my husband, Darius, died suddenly in a car accident. He was only 38. He owned a small construction company and was known for his charm and hard work. Everyone loved him, especially me. Losing him felt like losing the air I breathed. In those first few days after his death, I moved through life like a ghost. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't even look at his photos without breaking down. My only comfort came from my family, especially my little sister, Imani. She's 30, full of energy, a single mom raising her 4-year-old son, Caleb. She was always by my side, cooking for me, helping me with guests, wiping my tears. I thought I was lucky to have her. But during that week, I started noticing small things. Imani avoided my eyes when people mentioned Darius. His mother, who used to adore Imani, barely spoke to her. And Caleb, sweet, talkative Caleb, had this smile that reminded me too much of Darius. The shape of his eyes, the curve of his chin. I couldn't unsee it once I noticed. Still, I told myself I was imagining things. Grief can make your mind play tricks, right? The night after the funeral, I couldn't sleep. I went to sit on the porch, and moments later, Imani joined me. Her hands were shaking, eyes red like she'd been crying for hours. Before I could ask what was wrong, she said, "Monica, I can't live with this secret anymore." My heart started pounding. I didn't even know what she was about to say, but something deep inside me knew it would change everything. She took a long breath, looked me in the eye, and said, "Caleb's father, it was Darius." I remember staring at her, waiting for her to laugh, to tell me it was some cruel joke. But she just kept crying, whispering, "I'm sorry." It felt like the world stopped. My husband, the man I had built my life with, had betrayed me with my own sister. My hands went numb, my body froze. I couldn't even scream. I just stood up and walked away from her. That night, I walked barefoot in the rain, the sound of thunder mixing with the sound of my heartbeat. I thought losing Darius was the worst pain I'd ever feel. But now I knew real pain had just begun. The night Imani confessed, everything I thought I knew about my life shattered. It was late, past midnight. The rain outside hadn't stopped since the funeral, and the air in her living room felt heavy, like it already knew what was coming. Imani sat across from me, twisting her fingers, her eyes red and swollen. I thought she was just exhausted from the past few days. I had no idea she was about to crush what was left of my heart. She started with a whisper. "Monica, I can't carry this anymore. Not now that he's gone." Her voice cracked, and before I could ask what she meant, she said the words that will haunt me forever. "It happened 5 years ago, when you and Darius were separated." I froze. I didn't even breathe. She was trembling, crying harder now, saying she never meant for it to happen, that Darius told her it was a mistake, that he begged her to keep quiet because he didn't want to destroy me. I remember that year like it was yesterday. Darius and I had been struggling. We'd argued about everything, my long hours at the hospital, his late nights at work, how we never spent time together anymore. I told him I needed space, and for a few months we lived apart. I thought that time apart would heal us. I thought love would pull us back together. And it did, or at least that's what I believed. He came back one evening with flowers and tears in his eyes, saying he couldn't live without me. I had no idea he had already slept with my sister by then. Imani was quiet during those months. I thought she was just respecting our space. I never noticed the way she avoided talking about Darius, or how she looked away when his name came up. As she sat there crying, I felt something inside me break in a way I can't describe. My ears were ringing, my heart beating too fast. I wanted to scream, to hit something, to make the pain stop, but I just sat there, staring at her. She kept talking, saying Darius had promised her it was over, that he loved me, that he made her swear to take the secret to her grave. She said she couldn't bear the guilt anymore now that he was gone. Her words blurred together after that. I remember looking at Caleb's toys scattered on the floor, the little car, the stuffed bear, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. I realized that while I was fighting for my marriage, trying to fix what I thought was broken, my sister was carrying my husband's child. I didn't say a word. I just stood up and walked to the door. She tried to stop me, begging me to talk, but I couldn't. My voice was gone. I stepped outside into the rain, barefoot, my tears mixing with the cold drops falling from the sky. I walked until I couldn't feel the ground beneath me. That night, I didn't just lose my husband again. I lost my sister too. The morning after Imani's confession, I woke up with swollen eyes and a pounding headache. My mind kept replaying her words like a broken record. I wanted to believe it was all a nightmare, that Darius was still gone but at least faithful. But deep down, I knew the truth wasn't going anywhere. It was now a part of me, ugly, permanent, and burning. I started noticing the pieces I'd missed, the things that never made sense before. Darius used to buy Caleb expensive gifts for every birthday and holiday, things far beyond what an uncle would give: designer sneakers, remote control cars, even a tablet once. I remember teasing him about spoiling my nephew, and he'd just smile and say, "He reminds me of myself." I thought it was a sweet comment back then. Now it made my stomach turn. Then there were the family arguments. Anytime someone criticized Imani, whether it was about her choices, her work, or how she handled Caleb, Darius would always defend her, sometimes even more fiercely than he defended me. I used to think he was just being kind, but now I realized it was guilt. He wasn't protecting her reputation. He was protecting their secret. Even Darius's mother, she used to adore me, but after Caleb was born, she grew distant. There was always this awkward silence when the child was around, this look in her eyes I couldn't understand. Now it all made sense, she knew. She must have known. I couldn't stand not having answers, so I called Jamal Carter, Darius's best friend. Jamal was the kind of man who kept everything light, always joking, never serious. But when I brought up Imani, his tone changed. There was a long pause on the phone before he said, "Monica, I think there were things Darius wanted to tell you, but didn't know how." My hands started shaking. "You knew something, didn't you?" I asked. He sighed deeply and said, "I didn't know details. I just knew something was off. He wasn't himself those last few years." That was enough for me. I hung up and went straight to Darius's office. His laptop was still there, the password easy to guess. It was my birthday. I almost laughed at the irony. Inside one of the folders, I found a hidden file of old messages. My vision blurred as I read them. I saw her name. I saw his words: apologies, regrets, promises. He told her he loved her once. Imani had written back, saying she couldn't stop thinking about him, even though she knew it was wrong. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My hands trembled as I closed the laptop, staring at the framed wedding photo on his desk, the one where he kissed my forehead as everyone clapped. Without thinking, I grabbed it and threw it against the wall. The glass shattered, just like everything inside me. But as I stood there surrounded by broken pieces, something inside me shifted. The tears stopped. The shaking stopped. Grief twisted into something sharper, colder. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I was going to make Imani feel what it's like to lose everything. I learned quickly that anger couldn't last forever. It burns hot, then leaves you empty. So I did what I had to do. I buried the fire under a smile. When I saw Imani again, I hugged her like nothing had happened. My arms wrapped around her, but every muscle in my body was tight. She thought my silence meant forgiveness. She had no idea it meant calculation. "I just want us to move forward," I told her, my voice calm, steady. "Family is all we have left." The look of relief on her face almost made me sick. She believed me. She actually believed I could forgive her for sleeping with my husband and having his child. After that, I started visiting her more often. I'd play with Caleb, read him stories, buy him toys. I smiled every time he laughed, even though each giggle felt like a knife twisting in my chest. He had Darius's dimples, his smile, even the same way of tilting his head when he was curious. Sometimes I'd catch myself staring at him too long, torn between hate and heartbreak. The child was innocent, but he was living proof of the worst betrayal I'd ever endured. Inside, I was watching, waiting, taking notes on every weakness Imani had. Her boyfriend, Terrence Mills, was a decent man, steady job, kind heart, loved her and Caleb. But Imani had once told me she didn't really love him. She said he was too boring, that she missed the excitement Darius gave her. I stored that in my mind like ammunition. One afternoon, I casually mentioned to Terrence that Imani still talked about her past a lot, that she struggled to let things go. I could see the doubt forming in his eyes. Later, I told Imani that Terrence seemed distracted lately, that maybe he wasn't ready for commitment. I didn't lie outright. I just nudged the truth in the direction I needed it to go. Every time we talked, I'd leave my phone recording in my pocket. I captured her complaining about Terence, admitting she was tired of him, that she sometimes wished she had chosen differently in life. Each confession became another piece in my growing collection, a weapon I'd use when the time was right. I played my role perfectly. To everyone else, I was the grieving widow trying to rebuild her life. To Imani, I was the forgiving sister finally healing. But inside, I was sharpening my revenge piece by piece, with every fake smile and gentle word. One evening, after dinner at her place, Imani looked at me with teary eyes and said, "I'm just glad we can finally be honest with each other again. I missed you, Monica." I held her hand and smiled. "Me too," I said softly. But behind that smile, my teeth were clenched so tight my jaw ached. Honesty was the last thing between us now. What she saw as peace was just the calm before her storm. A few weeks after I started pretending to forgive, I got a call from the bank. They said there was a safe deposit box in Darius's name that I hadn't claimed yet. My stomach twisted. I didn't even know he had won. The next morning, I drove there, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The bank manager led me into a small room and placed a box on the table. It smelled faintly of cedar and dust, like something untouched for years. Inside were a few papers, insurance documents, old photos, and a small white envelope with my name written in Darius's handwriting. My chest tightened. The envelope was dated 6 months before his death. I hesitated for a long time before opening it. The letter inside started simply, "Monica, if you're reading this, then something has gone wrong. There are things I should have told you a long time ago." I felt my hands shaking as I read. He admitted it all, his affair with Imani, the guilt that ate him alive, how he tried to end it. "It happened when we were apart," he wrote. "It wasn't supposed to mean anything, and I swore it was over. Imani said she would tell you if I didn't leave you. I couldn't lose you, Monica. I couldn't lose us." My eyes blurred with tears, but they weren't just from pain, they were from rage. I read those lines over and over until the words started burning. Imani had threatened him. She wasn't some poor, weak victim of guilt. She was manipulative, calculating. She had used his fear to keep him quiet, maybe even to keep him close. The thought of her smiling in my face all these years while holding that kind of power made something inside me snap. The letter ended with him begging me to forgive him, saying he hoped to make things right before it was too late. But it was too late now for him and soon for her. I folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the envelope, and stared at my name on the front. Monica, the woman who had given up everything for love, who had believed in loyalty, who had been made a fool of by the two people she trusted most. That version of me was gone. As I left the bank, the cold air hit my face, but I barely felt it. My pain had turned into fire, steady, focused, and dangerous. Imani didn't just take my husband, she took my peace, my faith, my family. But I wasn't done yet. I was going to take everything from her, the way she took everything from me. That night, I lit a candle beside Darius's photo. I whispered, "You were weak." "But I'm not." Then I blew out the flame. In the darkness, I made a promise, to destroy the woman who turned my life into ashes. I collected proof like a woman gathering matches for a fire. Every message, every odd receipt, every whispered memory became fuel. I saved the letter from Darius, copied the texts I found on his laptop, and started looking for anything that would make the secret real to everyone else. I ordered a DNA kit and memorized how to get a hair sample without anyone noticing. I wasn't proud of what I was doing, but pride had left with Darius. Only one thing mattered now. The truth had to come out on my terms. I offered to help at Imani's salon the next week. "I can give you some time," I told her with a smile that felt like glass. She looked relieved, like a woman who finally had someone to lean on. I showed up on schedule, folding towels, sweeping hair, pouring coffee. I played the part of the supportive sister perfectly. I asked about booking systems and hand-delivered flyers to clients. I learned names and stories, what made regulars happy and what made newcomers uneasy. I listened more than I spoke, storing every scrap of information away. Slowly, I started nudging things in directions that looked accidental. I mentioned to a few clients, casually like gossip, how often Imani canceled appointments last minute or how she sometimes mixed up colors. I didn't lie. There were small mistakes, late nights, things a busy mom might do. But in the right ears, those small things sounded like carelessness, unprofessionalism. A client who loved the salon heard me and mentioned it to a friend. The friend told her sister. Word traveled faster than I expected. I also began slipping hints to family members I trusted to spread truths without looking like I was the one who started it. I called one aunt and asked if she'd noticed how close Caleb and Darius were. I told another cousin I'd found a strange note in Darius's things. I didn't tell them everything, just enough to make them curious, to plant the idea that something was wrong. People filled in the blanks themselves. Rumors grew like mold in warm places. Imani tried to keep the business afloat. She worked extra hours, promised to be more careful, smiled through the thin crowd. But bookings dropped. Regulars found new salons. A stylist left for a steady paycheck elsewhere. The rent stayed the same while the chairs stayed empty more often. I watched from the corner as her hands shook while she checked the register. I felt a cold satisfaction the first time a client walked out because the color wasn't right. It was petty and it was necessary. Terrence started pulling back, too. I let him overhear a conversation, just loud enough, where I hinted that Imani might be hiding more than stress. He asked her questions. She answered with half-truths and anger. He left one night without his keys. I heard the front door close and I sat very still, feeling the result of my careful planning take shape. Watching her fall apart almost filled the empty parts of me. But satisfaction tasted thin, like cheap wine after something strong. I wasn't finished. The trap had worked, and the pieces were moving the way I wanted. Still, a deeper part of me watched the ruin I caused and wondered how long I could keep breathing through it. I had everything planned down to the smallest detail. One afternoon, while Imani was distracted, I carefully collected a strand of Caleb's hair from his pillow, trying not to make a sound. My hands shook, but I forced myself to stay calm. Then I retrieved Darius's old comb from the dresser in my room. Every stroke of the comb through my fingers felt like holding the proof of my worst nightmare. Back at my apartment, I packaged the hair samples and sent them off to a reputable lab, requesting the results be mailed directly to me. The waiting was unbearable. Every hour felt like a lifetime. I replayed every memory of Darius, every laugh, every tender moment we'd shared, now tainted by the knowledge that my own sister had taken advantage of my trust. When the results finally arrived, I barely breathed as I opened the envelope. There it was, black on white, 99.9% match. Caleb was Darius's son. My chest tightened, and for a moment I couldn't move. I sat on the couch staring at the paper, the numbers blinding in their clarity. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was fact. Every strange look, every unexplained gift, every defended comment, it all made sense. I couldn't keep it for myself. I needed her to feel it, to understand the weight of a secret like this, the way it had crushed me from the inside. I framed the printout carefully, slipped it into a plain envelope, and sent it anonymously to her workplace. I imagined the moment she opened it, the realization hitting her like a lightning bolt. I didn't have to wait long. Her call came within hours, and I could hear the panic in her voice before she even spoke. "Monica, oh my God, everyone at work, they know, they're talking about me. I can't believe this." Her words tumbled out in a frantic rush, raw and broken. She was hysterical, sobbing between sentences, trying to explain herself but knowing no explanation could erase the evidence. I listened quietly, letting her voice crack and break the silence. There was no relief for me in saying anything yet. I wanted her to feel the chaos that had invaded her carefully curated life, the same way my world had been torn apart. Finally, I spoke, my voice low, calm, and steady. "Now you know how it feels when your whole life becomes a lie." There was a long pause. Imani's breathing was uneven, desperate. I could almost picture her shaking hands, the paper clutched in front of her co-workers, the whispers and stares she'd endure. Every emotion she had caused me, the betrayal, the pain, the rage, was now mirrored back at her. I hung up the phone slowly, sitting back as the silence of my apartment surrounded me. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel the emptiness that grief had left behind. Instead, there was a cold satisfaction. The proof was out, the lie exposed, and the trap I had set was closing. Imani's world was cracking apart, piece by piece, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. I knew immediately who it was. Imani. When I opened the door, she was soaked from the rain, her hair plastered to her face, her eyes wild and red from crying. She didn't wait for an invitation. She barged inside, slamming the door behind her, her fists clenched. "Monica, you think this is funny? You think you can just ruin me and walk away?" Her voice cracked, raw with anger and despair. I didn't move. I let her pace back and forth, watching her like a predator sizing up prey, except this prey was my own sister. She dropped to her knees at the kitchen table, clutching her hair. I didn't mean for any of this. I never wanted you to find out this way. Her words stumbled over themselves, her guilt spilling into the room like smoke. I couldn't help it. The anger that had been simmering inside me boiled over. You envied me, didn't you? I shouted, my voice echoing off the walls. You envied my life, my home, my husband. You wanted everything I had. Her shoulders shook and she whispered, I did. I always did. I loved him, Monica. But I was never supposed to hurt you like this. I felt my chest tighten. You think telling me now makes it okay? You think confessing fixes 5 years of betrayal? I would have given you anything, Imani, anything, but not my husband. Not Darius. Not my life with him. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the rain soaking her clothes. I'm sorry. I can't take it back. I can't, she screamed. She lunged at me, her hands trembling, almost hitting me in her desperation. I grabbed her arms just in time to keep her from swinging, but the rage in her eyes mirrored my own. We stood there, chest to chest, voices shaking, each word cutting deeper than the last. She confessed everything. How she had planned to keep the secret, how she had hoped I would never find out, how she had resented me for having the life she always wanted. Each word felt like a knife twisting inside me, but I didn't flinch. I needed her to feel it all. Finally, she pulled away, stumbling back toward the door. You're dead to me, Monica. You're nothing but a stranger, she yelled, her voice raw with fury and heartbreak. Then she was gone, slamming the door so hard it rattled the frames on the wall. I sank to the floor where she had been standing, my body trembling uncontrollably. The adrenaline, the anger, the grief, all of it crashed over me at once. I shook, not knowing if I felt vindicated or just hollow. My chest ached, my hands were numb, and yet, somewhere deep inside, a cold clarity settled over me. The confrontation was over. The words had been said, the secrets exposed. And as I sat there on the kitchen floor, soaked and exhausted, I realized that revenge wasn't just about making her suffer. It was about surviving my own pain. But surviving didn't feel like victory yet. It felt empty, and I didn't know if I would ever feel whole again. Weeks passed in a blur. Imani packed her things and left with Caleb, moving in with their aunt several towns away. She didn't speak to me again, not even a goodbye. The house that had once felt full of memories, laughter, and love now felt cavernous, cold, and silent. I had orchestrated her fall, exposed her secrets, and yet the emptiness didn't lessen, it grew heavier. I walked through each room, touching the surfaces, trying to feel something besides the ache in my chest. The echo of my own footsteps was deafening. Revenge, I realized, was not a bomb, it was a mirror. It reflected back every loss, every wound, every betrayal. The satisfaction I thought I'd feel never came. Instead, I felt hollow, as if the pieces I had carefully collected to hurt her had left a void inside me too. Darius's letter still sat on the nightstand, folded neatly in its envelope. I stared at it every morning, his words echoing in my head. I never wanted to lose you. I'm sorry. I'm weak. Weak. That word kept repeating over and over, as if haunting me from beyond the grave. His guilt had died with him, but it had left a living residue inside me, a weight that no amount of revenge could lift. One rainy afternoon, unable to endure the silence any longer, I drove to the cemetery. The sky was dark and heavy, the clouds low as if they were pressing down on me. I found Darius's grave and knelt beside it, letting the rain soak my hair and clothes. My fingers traced the engraving, feeling the cold, hard stone beneath my fingertips. I've lost everything, I whispered, my voice almost drowned by the storm. I've lost you, Darius. I've lost my sister. I've lost myself. My tears mixed with the rain, and for a moment I closed my eyes, letting the storm wash over me. I wanted it to take the anger, the grief, the emptiness. I wanted it to clean me of all the pain I had carried for months. The wind picked up, whipping through the trees, rattling the grave markers around me. Thunder rolled in the distance, low and relentless. I opened my eyes, staring at the dark clouds, and realized that storms don't choose when to come. They just arrive. And maybe I thought life is the same. Loss doesn't care if you're ready. Betrayal doesn't wait for a convenient time. And revenge doesn't heal. I stayed there until my clothes were drenched and my body shivered from the cold. The rain pounded on the ground like a drum, echoing my heartbeat, relentless and raw. I whispered again, softer this time, I'm still here. But I don't know who I am anymore. Walking back to the car, I felt the weight of the storm on my shoulders, a mirror to the storm inside me. Revenge had its satisfaction, fleeting and hollow, but it had not returned what I had truly lost. And standing there, in the rain and the grief, I realized that some costs are too high, no matter who pays them. 6 months had passed, and life had settled into a quiet routine that felt neither good nor bad, just empty. Imani and Caleb were gone, Darius's absence still a heavy shadow, and the revenge I had executed so meticulously now felt like a faint echo in the distance. I had learned to move through the days with a careful, measured calm, though the walls of my house seemed to close in more often than not. One afternoon, a plain envelope slipped through the mail slot. I picked it up, expecting bills or junk, but when I turned it over, my breath caught. It was from Imani. I hesitated, my hand trembling as I opened it. Inside was a single postcard, and for the first time in months, my heart skipped. There were no words, just Caleb's handprint, small and innocent, pressed in bright paint across the card. I held it in my hands, staring at the tiny print that mirrored Darius's. I didn't feel anger this time. Not immediately. Instead, a wave of grief hit me. A grief that wasn't sharp, not fiery like before, but quiet, aching, and real. I sat down at the kitchen table, the postcard clutched to my chest, and finally let the tears come. No rage. No betrayal. Just the long, empty mourning of everything I had lost, everything I had tried to control, and everything I had failed to save. After I cried, I picked up a pen and wrote back. My words were simple, honest, and weighed with the honesty that had been missing for so long. We were both betrayed. I just reacted louder. I didn't expect a reply. I didn't want one. Writing felt like releasing a piece of the pain, like finally speaking aloud what I had kept trapped inside. That night, I dug out Darius's letter from the safe where I had kept it like a relic of my suffering. I held it over the fireplace, feeling the edges curl in my fingers. The letter had haunted me for months, a constant reminder of love lost, trust broken, and the manipulations that had changed my life forever. But now I could let it go. I lit a match and dropped it onto the paper. The flames licked the edges, consuming every word, every confession, every apology. I watched it burn, feeling the weight lift, as if part of the storm inside me had finally passed. The next morning, I stepped outside. The sun was warm, cutting through the chill that had lingered in my bones. I breathed it in deeply, alone, but lighter than I had felt in months. There was no forgiveness for Imani. Not yet, maybe not ever, but there was acceptance. Acceptance of the losses, of the betrayals, of the life that had been torn apart and rebuilt in pieces. I walked down the street slowly, feeling the warmth on my face, letting it fill the spaces revenge and grief had once occupied. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel whole. But I felt free in a way I hadn't in a long time. Grief didn't destroy me. Secrets did. But I'm still here. Do you think Monica finally found peace by letting go, or did holding on to her pain teach her a lesson she needed? Share your thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear your take. And if stories like this move you, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next one.